Okay, so here's another bit of analysis from A Christmas Carol, this time focusing on the very end of Stave 3, page 36. So the Ghost of Christmas Present has taken Scrooge to lots of different places, the Cratchit family, all the different settings of the mine, the ship and the lighthouse, and then also to Fred's house. And then they leave Fred's house, they go to some other places which we don't find out about really, and then the ghost is about to leave. Now, we finished by drawing a line here, and this next bit that we're going to see is going to focus on the children of ignorance and want. And these children are the personification of society's problems. They are not real children. They are the embodiment of society's problems presented in the form of a child, and they're called ignorance and want. Now that has a variety of different purposes. One, the idea is being suggested that these children will grow up, and as they will grow into bigger problems. But also it kind of heightens how awful these problems are, because they're being presented as children that should be pure and innocent. So it's this idea that the world should be a pure and innocent and wonderful place, and actually humanity is tainting it and spoiling it with its kind of greed and desire and ignorance of those who need help. It was a long night, if it were only a night, but Scrooge had his doubts of this, because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. Scrooge had observed this change, but never spoke of it, until they left a children's Twelfth Night party. When looking at the spirit as they stood together in an open place, he noticed that its hair was grey. "Are spirits' lives so short?" asked Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," replied the ghost. "It ends to-night." "To-night!" cried Scrooge. "To-night at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near." So we have already been told that Ghost of Christmas Present has sort of more than 1800 brothers. The idea being that he only lives for, one sort of Christmas day, one 24-hour period or whatever it is, and then he dies. So one thing here is this kind of realization from Scrooge that whilst the ghost's life has been very brief, he actually does so much good. He has such a fulfilling life, and Scrooge should be reflecting on this. That's the idea at this point, that you look at what this one person does in his lifetime, and can we say the same about ourselves? And the idea being that Scrooge has been created by Dickens, so that as Scrooge is supposedly supposed to reflect on this, so should the reader be thinking, wow, do I do as much good as this person does? And the other idea here with this idea of the ghost dying is that we've got this theme of time here, and the idea being suggested is that time is running out. The time is running out for the ghost, but time is also running out for Scrooge, and he needs to change now. He's kind of gone through this process of realization, but we've got this tension, we're building towards a climax, and there's a pressure on him to actually turn his words into actions. And we see that already when he then turns round and says, "Forgive me if I am not justified in what I ask," said Scrooge, looking intently at the spirit's robe, "but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw?" And here we see the Scrooge being very polite and respectful in the kind of language that he's using here. Forgive me, for example. He's probably never asked for forgiveness before, not as an adult or in recent years anyway. And then the Ghost of Christmas Present replies, "It might be a claw, for there is flesh upon it," was the sparrow's sorrowful reply. "Look here." From the foldings of its robes it brought two children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable, and we've got this list here really emphasizing how depressing it is, and the idea of the children, this idea that they should be pure, they should be sort of filled with innocence, but in actual fact they are disgusting and off-putting. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. Now, if we look at what they're doing here, this idea of them kneeling down in front of the ghost suggests that they're begging, and the clinging suggests desperation. They're looking to the ghost for hope and for guidance. They're looking to God because they don't get it from anybody on earth. So they're now kind of purely dependent and grasping onto that hope that the ghost and therefore God provides, because there's nobody looking out for them on earth. "Oh man, look here, look down here," exclaimed the ghost. They were a boy and girl, yellow, meagre, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too in their humility. Now, yellow could suggest that they are almost sick. Meagre means they're very slight, so this kind of thin. They've got ragged clothes, reminding us how poor they are, but also cold, I guess you could write there as well. See if we can squish that in, cold. And they're scowling and they're wolfish. They're kind of angry, but also wild and hungry. But equally, they're prostrate, which means that they're laying flat down. They're flat on the ground, which gives us a sense that they've given up. Despite only being young, they've already given up on life, and they're sort of surrendering to the badness. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into their shreds. So it's almost like he's saying they're old before their time. A hand like that of age has sort of affected them, and they are appearing like caricatures, a bit like Scrooge did at the beginning. Remember, caricatures is where the guy or woman will draw your features, do a portrait of you, and they'll kind of accentuate and exaggerate your features. And these are the kind of same, like Scrooge with his big chin and all sort of pinched and ugly by his evilness, I guess. So really what's being suggested here is they've lost the innocence and they've lost the fun of childhood. And the way it says that they're, a shriveled hand has pinched them, it sort of reminds me of the horny hands of the lighthouse workers earlier on in Stave 3. But the idea is to build one of hardship. And then it says, where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacing. No change, no degradation, no perversion of humanity in any grade. Through all the mysteries of wonderful creation, has monsters half so horrible and dread. So it's really exaggerating how evil they are. They're monsters, they're menacing, devils lurk there. Scrooge stared back, appalled. Having them shown to him in this way, he tried to say that they were fine children, but the words choked themselves, rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. "Spirit, are they yours?" Scrooge could say no more. "They are man's," said the spirit, looking down upon them, "and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Both beware them both, and all of their degree, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Deny it," cried the spirit, stretching out its hand towards the city. "Slander those who tell it ye, admit it for your factious purposes, and make it worse, and bide the end." So here we've got the fact that we're told that the children are man's children, and really what that's telling us is these are society's children, society's problem. So this is where this idea of them being metaphors for the problem of society, they have been created and born out of the issues in society, and by presenting them as children they will grow into bigger problems. One of the children is called ignorance, because people ignore the problems in society. They're not willing to do anything about it, just like we know Scrooge does. And the other one is want. To be in want of something really means need. So this girl want is really called need, if you think about it like that. So Scrooge then responds, "Have they no refuge or resource?" cried Scrooge. "Are there no prisons?" said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. "Are there no workhouses?" And there's two ways of looking at this here. Firstly, Scrooge wants to help because he's saying, have they no refuge or resource? But again, he's not offering himself up, so he still sees that it's someone else's problem for them to fix. And when the spirit turns these words from Scrooge in Stave 1 back on himself, Scrooge starts to realise that these things are not going to be good enough, and he can't continue to be blind and ignorant to society's problems. And then the bell struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. So the figure of the next ghost, Ghost of Christmas Future, appears, and he is like the Grim Reaper. Read my notes down. Sort of symbolising death and torture and fear and mystery, I guess, as well. But I think the other thing to note is that suddenly this ghost is here at the end of Stave 3, whereas the other ghosts appeared at the beginning of Stave 2 and the beginning of Stave 3. So we would kind of expect this one to come at the beginning of Stave 4. And I think Dickens did that to sort of suggest that time is running out. He can't escape this ghost unless he starts to change and heed the warnings of ghosts, the previous two ghosts, and of Jacob Marley as well. Okay, so that takes you to the end of Stave 3. You might want to pause it at different points. You might want to go back and just check you've got all of that down, but that's a really important end to that stave or chapter.